Hi, today we're looking at the Peel method for creating paragraphs. What is this Peel method, you say? It is about introducing a point, providing evidence, elaborating / explaining, and concluding and then linking on to the next paragraph. Now, if we do that for every single paragraph, we end up achieving a higher order paragraph that meets all the needs of the question that we're addressing. So in the point section, we introduce a point that addresses the question that we're answering. The second section in the paragraph is the evidence section. In this part, you need to give evidence to support the point that you have made in the previous section of your paragraph. The next thing you're required to do in a paragraph is to explain, elaborate, and analyze your evidence. You need to say how it meets the point that you have raised. So you provide your evidence, then you explain how it meets that point that you have introduced to begin with. The final component of a paragraph is to conclude it. You need to say how you have met the point that you have introduced to start off with. If you are writing an essay, for example, or some other form of text where you need multiple paragraphs, you need to link it into those paragraphs as well to create some sort of flow or sequence to what you're writing. So what we're going to do is going to look at how we can specifically apply the Peel method to a question. So the question is, why was the Enabling Act and the Emergency Decree key in Hitler assuming the role of Führer? So let's answer that question. Let's break it down. So first thing we have to do is introduce the point. So we can say the Emergency Decree and the Enabling Act were key in Hitler assuming the role of Führer as they gave political power to Hitler to challenge his political and social enemies. So what we have done here is we've actually created a point that meets the question, and then we're going to look at this particular point within the paragraph. Stage 2 of our paragraph writing is giving evidence. We need to provide evidence to support the point that we have made. So in order to do that, this is the example that we're going with. Howard Skeisberg, professor at the University of Oxford, specializing in World War II history, identified the Enabling Act gave Hitler special constitutional powers that allowed him to directly challenge and remove his opponents. Millions of Jews, communists, homosexuals, and people with inherent disabilities were killed as a result. It is also important to note that within this evidence section, we have made a link to a credible source. So as you can see here, Howard Skeisberg is a professor at the University of Oxford. Therefore, his reliability for the source is quite credible. We have made a direct link using a quote that he has said, and this supports our point through evidence. The next part of our paragraph is to elaborate or further explain our point and how the evidence meets that point. So the way we can do this is by writing something like this, for example. The Enabling Act and the Emergency Decree effectively shut down the Communist Party and allowed the Nazi Party to prosecute Jewish citizens, people who identify as homosexual, and people with disabilities. We have elaborated here on the evidence that was presented. Now, it can sometimes feel like that we are repeating ourselves, but the term elaborate means to further explain and to expand on the evidence that we have done. And that's what we're doing. Now, the final part of the paragraph is to link and conclude. We are going to conclude our point that we have originally addressed. The Enabling Act and the Emergency Decree removed political and social opponents and allowed free persecution of Hitler's enemies. So as you can see here, we have gone through each of the 4 steps of the paragraph, and we'll see what happens when we put them all together. The Emergency Decree and the Enabling Act were key in assuming the role of Führer as they gave him political power to challenge his political and social enemies. Howard Skeisberg, a professor at the University of Oxford specializing in World War II history, identified the Enabling Act gave Adolf Hitler special constitutional powers that allowed him to directly challenge and remove his opponents. Millions of Jews, communists, homosexuals, and people with inherent disabilities were killed as a result. The Enabling Act and the Emergency Decree effectively shut down the Communist Party and allowed the Nazi Party to prosecute Jewish citizens, people who identified as homosexual, and people with disabilities. These acts of legislation removed political and social opponents and allowed free persecution of Hitler's enemies. Now, as you can see, when we look at this particular paragraph, it flows on quite well, and you can see the different sections built in throughout it. we have directly referred back to the points that we have addressed. So just remember, when in doubt, call on Peel to answer your paragraphs. Use this strategy well because it will actually build on your ability to answer particular questions and build structured responses that you need throughout your schooling and throughout the HSC as well. Thank you.